Hey everyone, Angelo here, Los Angeles filmmaker, originally from Virginia, which is where this story originates. And I just reported the Baptist pastor who abused me to the Baptist World Alliance 9 years after the abuse originally happened. I've talked about this story a bunch of times, but I can't believe I just reported it. Now, the pastor, William Wagner, died last May. He was 97, but I believe there are other victims. There must be. He was 89 at the time it happened. So I don't think there's any way he would have just done this with me and not had developed his techniques and learned how to operate in stealth and deploy pressure and sexual harassment and very creepy tactics on people. And this is something I've talked about on video before, and I played off a lot of times as a joke, like, oh, this dirty old man, what a creep. And I realized how disturbing it was finally, like 9 years later, because it still disturbs me. And even had like a nightmare about it the other week. And it just keeps doing this thing in me. Like, I'm able to have a good life, I'm able to do a lot of things, but it's important to know it affects me. And it makes me so sick that a predator would operate like this, seemingly without detection from his church. I thought to do this because his obituary lists the Baptist World Alliance and other churches, other Baptist churches, and it said to make donations to, I forget which group exactly. It may be the Baptist World Alliance. I have to double check, but I'll have his obituary in the description so people can be perfectly clear who I'm talking about. William Wagner of Falls Church, Virginia, 97 years old. And again, he was 89 when I lived with him for a month, from December 1st to the end of December 2013. He was a total creep. He was a sexual harasser, and he was trying to put me in a position of being a willing victim to some kind of horrible predicament like an assault. Now, being much older than me, I was 28, like, he couldn't physically overpower me, but it's so disturbing to note. First of all, the idea of he was my landlord. I just needed a place to live. I was living on my friend's parents' couch for a month after my brother attacked me. And that's part of the process, I think, of him putting the price so low, not requiring a security deposit, not requiring me to pay all the rent for the month up front, of trying to get someone who was in a position like mine, who had troubles, and who he might have believed is either not likely to believe, or is withdrawn, or is confused and doesn't know how to speak up. And I didn't know what to say. I thought for sure if I tried to expose him to his, at the time he was retired, but he still was connected with the church somehow, and he did Bible study once a week, I think, or once every 2 weeks, something like that. The only time that pain in the ass ever got out of the house. I was like, there's no way anyone's going to care what I say. I see the sort of community he must have cultivated around him. Very ignorant, very much look the other way, very sort of insular, white, privileged community that doesn't believe something like this happens around them. Now, that was just my impression, but how did he get to be the age of 97 and I see him celebrated in an obituary? And he was a gross, crude, mean predator. He intended nothing good for me. He was a liar. I would sit next to him when he would intrude on my breakfasts, because I would eat breakfast late in the day. I was working nights as a bouncer, wasn't sleeping well. I would have to walk past his office. So my room was on the second floor. Then there was his office next to it. And then next to that was the kitchen. So I'd have to walk past his office. And sure enough, a minute after I'd walk past him, he'd stand in the kitchen doorway and say, "Good morning, Angelo. How are you doing today?" And it was a little obnoxious, then irritating, then extremely disturbing that this guy does not respect at all that I don't want to talk to him. There's no reciprocation of me asking him how's he doing. And he even one time, it was so gross. He said, can I show you? He had everything very controlled and neatly organized. That was a creepy quality, but I didn't quite detect it yet. The fact that he had like everything so neatly organized, laid out. He was very careful about his appearance. He groomed himself meticulously. He had different dinnerware for each season, like different plates for winter, for fall, for spring, for summer. And being December, I forget if he was just switching the plates at that time or what, but he even asked me once, can I show you my, the new winter dinnerware? And I said no. He's like, it'll only take a minute. It made me so mad. I'm like, wish I just smacked him. But again, he was my landlord. What was I supposed to do? This guy was crafting a scenario where I couldn't do anything. So I've talked about it so much. What did he do? What was creepy about it? The short of it is this. He kept asking me to lunch and dinner every day. He was way overly, the theatrical quality, the friendliness to me, it was performative. When I came up to his door the first time I moved in, he's like, I have 2 words for you. Welcome home. I was like, why the menace? Yeah, that the menace he put in there is like, that was sincere. That was not like, oh, here's just a good, funny thing to say. And he said he thought God wanted me to be there. I'm like, I'm an atheist. I don't care about any of it. He asked me to lunch, and I was dead tired. I'd come out of 9 months of DPDR that last May or so, and I was still not sleeping well for a year following that. Roughly a year, a little over a year, I think. I think it was like September 2014 before I could sleep a full night. I didn't want to go. I didn't feel good about myself. I was like, I had become overweight after the 9 months of disability and then not really doing that well afterward. But I said, okay, fine. We went to Harvest Moon on Graham Road off Route 50. I'm like, what's this old pain in the ass want to talk about? Okay, well, like, can I talk about anything that's pleasant with him? I thought, well, maybe he likes old movies. I like old movies. I talked to him about Dodsworth, one of my favorite films. He said he hadn't seen it. The last movie he saw was like 1967 or something. And again, this was 2013. And I said how it's this look at infidelity, and it's a very honest look at it and the psychology of these characters. This woman is married to an older man, and she ends up having affairs. And he starts telling me how, did you know that women cause most divorces? I'm like, oh boy, he's already getting into he has a problem with women. And yeah, he had a big problem with women. He said how he was a government scientist and he studied animal life, and he was saying how he found out that animals and even insects were gay. And I'm like, why is he telling me this stuff? And he told me how his son was gay, so he put his son in the hospital to try and make him straight. This was decades earlier. But he said after 3 or 4 days, he took him out of the hospital because he was still gay. And he said, that's when I knew that being gay was genetic. And my head was just spinning. I didn't know what he was. I'm like, first of all, I was like, oh, I never met a guy who actually did that. I've only heard about this. And, I was younger, naive. I didn't know, like, I knew that was wrong, like, to do that to a kid. That's torture. But I'm like, this is real? But I've never seen this before in a person. I'm like, I don't know what to think of this. I knew this was unpleasant. Like, why would you do that to yourself? It's not even a judgment. Like, okay, it was a judgment, but that wasn't the prominent thing in my mind. It was the whiplash of, okay, you're the most homophobic person I've ever met. I'm guessing, according to your religion, you believe all these horrible misnomers about homosexuality, whatever, the devil having to do with it, fallen nature, all that stuff. And yet you flipped that easily in 3 or 4 days and saying I knew it was genetic. What I didn't think at the time to get through my head was, yeah, where was this pastor, William Wagner, saying his son got the genes from? He kept asking me to lunch and dinner every day. It was extremely annoying. I even berated him to try and get him to stop, tell him I was so tired. I'm working 7 days a week. I was working 2 jobs. I only have 1 night off every 2 weeks. 2 weeks in, I was going to the bathroom. I must have been carrying my towel and stuff with me to go shower, or my change of clothes, because I change in the bathroom after I shower. And he said, can I take you to lunch? today? And I said, no. And he said, can I take you to dinner? I said, no. And he said, can I get in the shower with you? I said, no. He said, I'm just kidding. I looked at him like, what the heck? And he just stood there, kept staring at me. That was creepy. But again, the blurring of what did he intend or not, he intended exactly that. He wanted to get in the shower with me. It was so creepy. There was a whole situation, but I naively, I don't know why I helped him with anything, was helping him move his nativity scene. He had these big figurines, like big plastic hollow figurines with lights inside of like Jesus, or not, well, Jesus was a baby, but like Joseph and Mary and the three wise men. And they were like under a staircase, and there was a storage area under the staircase, like a closet. And so I had to, like, he asked my help to put it out on his balcony. So, okay, I was helping him even though I didn't want to. And I was having to crawl down and maybe get flat on my stomach, I think, and pull out these figurines from under the staircase. And I remember him just standing there staring at me. And I just remember thinking, oh, it's kind of weird that this old man is just staring at my body. And I had the thought that, well, he can't physically overpower me, but it is kind of weird. Like, otherwise I'd be more scared. And as I say this just now, 9 years later, I just realized he may have physically overpowered people. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too far because there's no point, but why would he have been staring? Oh man, it just hit me just now, just talking this out, literally for the first time. I went back and forth from that staircase, bringing the figurines out into his balcony, which was on the second floor. And to get there, you had to go through his office. So I went back and forth, and eventually he kind of disappeared. I think he went to the living room to watch TV. And so I kept going back and forth. And then one of the times I walked through there, I noticed there was something different on his desk. There were two pieces of paper. I kind of want to grab paper, but okay, whatever. I don't really have any. He had two pieces of paper like this. One was totally white. The other had something on it, and all I remember is it had something that looked like a little drawing of a candle on it or something. I just remember thinking, it looks like something poking out. I walked by it a few times, and eventually I looked at it because I'm like, this wasn't here before. I pull off the blank piece of paper, and it was a crude graphic drawing of two men having sex. And it was a graphic, like, sex letter between describing sex acts that someone wanted to do with another man. I was just, at that point, it was just like, I was just seeing flashes of words, you know, like in a horror movie when it just cuts quickly, like you looking around the room, realizing where you are. I was just seeing flashes of the words, you know, body parts, genitals, sucking, all that stuff. Just seeing, I could not focus my eyes to read like 5 words at once. And then I look on his bookshelf, and I realized, like, there's all these books showing his obsessions. Books like titles with things like gay theology, pastoring to a gay congregation, stuff like that. And I knew he had correspondence with prisoners. He wrote letters to prisoners. He told me that. It even says in his obituary he did that. So I was thinking this was a letter to a prisoner. But in my mind, this so didn't match with the person, this persona he was putting out. I was like, well, maybe he's writing prisoners because they send him these letters, and he's trying to counsel them against these thoughts, which that alone, it's still such a weird, perverted thing. But I'm like, at least it would make him consistent about his horrible beliefs, his homophobia. I don't buy any of this Christianity nonsense anyways. I'm like, yeah, look at these weirdos who get mixed up into it. And I remember, I think even after that, like, he would come up to me in the kitchen when I'm making breakfast. He would sit next to me and he would say his little prayer before he ate. And I remember watching him and thinking, does he believe any of this stuff? This guy must be like the loneliest guy. I don't see how he can believe any of this Christianity, anything. I think it's all a bizarre theatrical act to justify his sick compulsion, this thing inside him that he must sort of love and hate, this love of power over others, but this hatred of this part of himself, where it's like he's saying, I don't have this, whatever this compulsion is in him, this sexual compulsion, this victimizing of others, this acting out. I don't have that because I'm not guilty of it, because I'm not saying anything sexual to Angelo. I'm just pressuring him into a situation where he sees the sexual scenario clearly. And so if he says it first, meaning if I was a willing victim, because there's no chance in hell this thing is ever going to be anything I want something to do with, then he's the one who's doing it. But I could imagine a few things. He's laying out for me a scenario where if I said something like that, he would completely possess me, like devour me. Like that's like the gate is open and the bull has run. Or if I spoke out against him about it, the fact that he was working so hard to craft a picture that, first of all, he was the most homophobic guy I ever met, but that like none of this was really happening, I could imagine him getting absolutely furious with me over it. So I'm like, there's no one to tell. Like he's groomed everybody around him to believe this. By the way, he also told me too, after his wife died like decades earlier, he was still a pastor. He wasn't retired yet, I guess. He said something like, these women from the church after my wife died wanted to have sex with me. Like he was so disgusted, like a little boy, about it. Like, ooh, stay away from me, women. Anyways, yeah, there's like something to try and, from post-traumatic stress to go to post-traumatic growth, which means having a context and developing my wellness apart from that. But it absolutely sickened me to see that pornographic drawing. Absolutely like turned this like icy coldness into me and like on my tongue. This guy is like an insect predator who wants to like hollow out his prey and like live in their skin or something. It made me so angry, like the injustice of it, like the manipulation, like, oh, you're a total coward. You can't even speak to me directly. Not that I want him to say that stuff, but like you're just a coward whose whole goal is to manipulate and victimize. So I finally sent an email to the Baptist World Alliance, March 24th, about him. And I put details about the home we lived in on Salem Road in Falls Church, close to Route 7. Put details about the stuff he said to me, the layout of his house, all that. I don't know what to expect from them. I don't expect an answer. I would like to think they're good and decent people, because what I said was, I believe he had other victims. It needs looking into. Other people may want to come forward and say who he was and expose this rot in the Baptist church. Again, I was never a Baptist. I just needed a place to stay. I answered his ad on Craigslist. So he was devising a plan to get someone like me early on. And there were two other guys who lived there. He was a hairdresser. I believe he was French, who lived there. And then there was another guy, a taxi driver, who lived there. And I remember him saying he was married. I know there's other people out there he's victimized. And if you see this, and you knew William Wagner, just know that, like, it's up to you. Like, nobody should have made me report anything. I decided on my own to do it. And it just something I realized, like, oh yeah, I never reported this. And at least for my own accountability, like I have an account now of me having emailed them and told them they have a predator there. So I'm in a way, I'm not looking for the Baptist World Alliance's approval or anyone's. I'm just making sure I'm looking for my own approval. I'm going to be the person that I aspire to be, like, and it doesn't mean it was wrong not to report earlier. I didn't even understand what I went through, really. So I hope it's just a good step, an empowering step. And I hope the Baptist World Alliance takes it very seriously and digs back through all the churches he was pastoring at and may have visited and uncovers exactly the nature of his relationships with anyone he may have abused, and that they somehow make some account of it for themselves, like take accountability, go to the police if necessary to make sure, at the very least, I don't know, because he's dead, so there's going to be no justice for him. He evaded justice, except that I'm sure he lived a hellish, lonely life. But at least so this is out, so people better understand how to spot predators like him, how to speak up about predators like him, how to not accommodate their behavior, how to better screen for people like him, maybe reconsider your own values and what you prioritize in people. If you think, oh, this is a good guy, and like you don't think to consider, like, what is he showing you? Do you scrutinize yourself to understand yourself, and can you understand others? Because for me, I always try and understand myself and see, where am I wrong, what don't I know. But it took a long time for me to even understand this was happening, even though it hit me so hard what he was doing to me, how creepy he was. Anyways, I can't belabor the point much longer, but I'll put the obituary for him in the description. So you can try and contact one of those churches. Again, like contacting the church to investigate their own. Will they? Won't they? I don't know. But at least that's something. So say if they don't, now there's all of a sudden these accounts of people saying, look, we reported to him, and we have this account now of them ignoring it. It's a way of at least sort of, clearing ranks, or making it so these Baptist churches are less willing to overlook signs that someone's a predator, and are better able to scrutinize people for signs of predatory behavior. And also, you really got to consider, like, what you're teaching about homosexuality and how it drives people to probably abuse. In William Wagner's case, I'm guessing he was abused for being gay, or at the very least, he really internalized it in a horrible way, and he abused his son. So preaching homophobia, that doesn't work. You're going to damage and warp people. So at the very least, reconsider that stuff and really have a reckoning about what you do, what you put out there, and how that damages and corrupts people and hurts them. And at the very least, makes them live in secrecy and hide their identity, hide in the closet. And at worst, leads to abuse visited on them or on others, and turns people inside out. And their identity becomes completely wrapped around this thing that people hate, or that they hate in themselves, and when it shouldn't be. There should be a healthy view of it, which is just, hey, everybody's who they are. They're different. We should welcome that. We should appreciate that and celebrate that. The problem is not a sexual orientation. The problem is the abuse, lies, cover-ups, and the hatred towards that orientation, and all the weird psychological pressures that are put on people for that. So anyways, I hope this is, reaching people who may feel a little better or get something better out of it, whether it's William Wagner or another predatory pastor or priest or bishop or whoever, some official. Doesn't have to be in a church. So anyways, thanks for watching.